All right, what's going on, Macro Perspective peeps? I've got a really great episode today here with Marcos and John. I'm going to save his last name for him to pronounce, but he's better known as Coach U on all platforms. This man is a gift in the, health and wellness space, fitness, nutrition, having a podcast of his own, coaches some of the best, and has his own background. But I'm going to give it to him here. Y'all heard it first. He is an amazing coach in real time. In 1 hour, got my golf swing to be the absolute best in 1 hour that it could be, going from chopping into the floor, chopping into the ground to hitting a 220 yard beautiful straight out into the Griffith Mountains there in LA. John, thank you so much for being on the pod. Why don't you do a little intro for yourself and just kind of, yeah, what are the big things interesting for you right now, my man?
Yeah, I appreciate you guys having me. Yeah, first name John, like you said. Last name is the fun one. It's Ureña. It's a fun one. That's where the Coach U came from. No one could really pronounce the last name, so we just went with Coach U. And so it spurred a lot of things with my podcast and my brand and those kinds of things. I've been coaching since 2011, and I started working with a lot of athletes in 2018, and then has carried that ever since. And so I work with a lot of general population. So I have people as old as, I'm going to say as young as 87 years old, who's coming off of a pacemaker, who has a heart surgery, had a pacemaker put in, as young as 9 years old, to helping athletes just learn running mechanics and learn how to be athletic and to move better. So that's what I do for a living. I have a brand, as I'm wearing this shirt here. It's all about being yourself and being the best possible person you possibly can be to other people, but even more so understanding yourself, knowing yourself, and pushing yourself to be better every day and evolving. And so that's the brand. And then the podcast is about interviewing people and getting to know experts and learning from people who are really good at what they do, because that always helps me learn, and it always helps me with my clients and in my life, and just networking and sharing and learning from others. So that's a little bit about me right now.
Good stuff. Well, thanks for the elevator pitch. I think that may have been the shortest one to date, which is, again, I think something that people always need to refine. It's like a good opening question for people. But I mean, there's a lot of detail to like what you're doing. Obviously, like you have like your brand, like you said, that you're kind of working on. You have the podcast component, then you have obviously the in-person component. I take it, right? I mean, is your model more like, do you do a lot of hybrid stuff, or is it primarily like in person?
It's primarily in person. So I travel all over LA, which is a task and a half. And if you've ever driven in LA, you know that 13 miles is not 13 minutes. It's not 15 minutes. It's not 40 minutes. It's typically about an hour. And, so I try to space it out at the right times and, hit the right moments. But yeah, so I'm typically traveling. I have a couple of online clients, and then I program a lot. I do program for a lot of people. So all those are components of what I do for work.
Okay. How many people do you actively work with, like as it stands today, out of curiosity?
Yeah, I actually just counted it yesterday because I was going over my client list, and I think I have 15 active, and I typically do between 20 and 25 sessions a week. So
Wow.
It's quite, it keeps me busy.
That's a lot in LA. That's a lot in LA.
It's a lot, man. So it keeps me busy, keeps me honest, but it's cool that I just have so many different people that I get to communicate with and talk to and learn from every day.
So then the in-person component, like you said, 20 to 25 sessions, does that like collectively amongst the 15 more or less?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I take it your 87-year-old might have like 1 day a week, and then your other people might have like 2 in person, or how does that work typically?
Yeah. She actually, she's doing 2 days a week, and she works hard, and it's actually really cool to work with somebody who just has such a positive outlook on life. And it really doesn't matter about age. It's just about, again, doing what you can to be better. And so I've been working with her for a few months, and it's been really uplifting to see that, that push from somebody who has been through a trauma recently. So I do have that piece of it where I get to like look back and see what she can teach me. As far as like, sorry, I forgot the other part of the actual question. I had a good thought on it. And could you please repeat that for me?
No, keep going. I'll bring you back to it with okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I just think, having that, that's what you were asking. Sorry. So having a couple different people working in different hours during the week. So I have some athletes I see 5 days a week, some I see once a week. And so it really just depends on their schedule, their availability. But I'll tell you right now, these days, kids these days, man, they got crazy schedules. It's wild. Like I
Hmm.
go see a kid who, I see him 5 days a week. And then after that, he has 1 to 2 more practices with his shooting coach or with their skills coach. And then they have homework and then they get school. And then it's just like, it's wild to me. So I do see some of my athletes 5 days a week. I see some of my gen pops mostly 2 days a week. I have a couple oneers a week, and just to check in, get the programming. It's kind of like homework, and we give them things to do, and see how things are going, and then we go from there.
Sweet. So, not to like steer this conversation into like, maybe the 50 plus, like, or geriatric kind of age range, or to like the younger group, but I think we should pick one of those for today because we have a hard time typically doing that, Seamus. And then therefore we
I
can
want
do part
I
two
want to
with
go.
like different.
Yeah, I want to go with the sports performance athletic side, John. If that's cool, because I know like you have a lot of input there, and
I
I
do
mean the fact that I feel I know you to be a rotary sport athlete, right? I think a lot of baseball growing up, right?
a lot of
Um,
baseball.
and I mean just the golf alone, like your tips alone, the practices alone. Yeah, let's go there. I think that'd be great. Um, why don't we go down that lane of that five-person an athlete, five
Mm.
times a week athlete, right? Like for me already, when we talked about this, when I first got to meet you, when you're telling me about this person, I was like, yo, 5 sessions per week with you, then two, right? But then they still have to play their sport. Like, I mean, you have to think about that. I think the first thing you said to me wasn't like, oh, I don't really care about the programming. I need to talk to the parent. Like, I need to figure out, like, hey, this is what I can do with this kid, right? Like, can you break that down with us? Like, um, yeah, what kind of expectations are you laying down for parents and teens when you're like working with them and understanding, like, hey, they still have like a ton of other things they need to do, like hang out with friends and homework.
Yeah, I think being patient is number one, and really letting them understand that if you're constantly going at high rev, you're never going to have that baseline to be able to then increase your baseline. If you can't recover back down to a level where you can then put more out, there's no way you're going to end up building and building. You're just going to stay here the whole time, if not drop, because your nervous system is just shocked. It's tapped. So, and I actually had this conversation with the athlete last week because he asked a question about, jumping and can I get more height? And I'm like, yeah, but every time I see you, I have to adjust based on what you are doing outside of what I'm doing. And so it is a very tough situation in that way. But I do think being transparent and honest and very objective. And that's what I normally am. It's very objective. I take emotion out of what I do when it comes to having those conversations, because emotion, it's not hurting my feelings. I tell him this too. If like, is there something in our sessions that you don't like? Because I'm like, you're not going to hurt my feelings. I need to know, so objectively I can make changes. And so when I'm talking to the parents and I'm talking to the athletes, I'm very objective about what we're doing. I'm very honest. I lay out the facts. Hey, here's what you did this week. Here's where we are today. All right, this is what I had planned. Let's go here, here, and here. And we're going to skip this, but we're going to add this in today. No, you need more of a recovery day today. All right, let's get a little bit more recovery workout in today. Let's get some more strength mobility in today, as opposed to pushing our 1RM squat, because that was what I wanted to do, but now you come and you're dead. Right. And so it's really just an adjusting on the fly type thing, and being open and honest with all parties and asking them questions and allowing them to speak and not really talking at all. And then
Mm.
when I need to give my piece, I give my piece of what I'm seeing.
So if your young kid comes in, your athlete, and I guess objectively he's not feeling it, but like objectively you did want to test like a 1RM on that day, do you go through like, do you use any other tools like, I don't know, like a velocity based trainer or like a grip test or any of those kind of objective measures to kind of gauge that typically?
Yep, absolutely. I love VBT. It's velocity based training for anyone who's listening and doesn't know about it. It's essentially a great way to, in the moment, real time, see where your system is at. It tells you, so there's categories of where you can lift in terms of the velocity that you're outputting, whatever. If you're lifting a trap bar, you want a deadlift. If you have a bench press, it'll calculate your velocity. And there's categories you can see online. If you look it up, it shows you, and I'm sure you guys know about it really well. I use velocity-based training absolutely to do that. Grip strength testing I do periodically. I'll do it more so as like a weekly check-in, especially with like an injured athlete, because that helps me see where their nervous system is and where their possible ability to do something that day is. So both of those are absolutely things I've done. A lot of times I'll test balance, because that will tell me where they're at too that day. And I love seeing how they are cognitively. So I use other things. I'm looking down, I have the Blaze pods. I have some other technology here with me. So like little things just to see where they're at. And most of the time you could tell based on their mood what they're into and what they're not into. And don't get me wrong, you have to push them at times. Like there's definitely times you have to push and try to get the most out of them. But I always say like we need to find that 100, whatever your 100 is today. I want you to find that, because it's different than yesterday. Let's stay right at that 100, right below it. If we can hit that 80 to 90%, you're going to still feel good. We can still get a lot of good work in. And that's typically how I'll adjust, or how I'll find what we can do for the day.
Yeah.
Interesting. So you mentioned mood, but that's like a subjective reading. So like you kind of have tuned in some sort of subjective observation, and then you're like, I'm guaranteed like his reaction speed might be down on the Blaze pods today. Like, and you're like, that's maybe not science, and not utilize the strategy that you had kind of in your head for the game plan for the day.
Yeah, I think I do.
Okay.
I have a lot of feel for people, and I've always been into psychology. I've always had the ability to let people just talk and feel comfortable and vulnerable. And I allow that space because I think it's so important. When I'm seeing somebody 5 days a week, you also are really seeing somebody every day, like in a row, how they are, how they show up. How was school today? How are you feeling today? Those are my first questions. What's the body like today? What's the brain like today? Like what's your overall status right now? And do you got the go today? Or are you feeling like you got the oomph? Or do you feel like, no, I'm just going to get through this workout? And if the answer is I just got to get through this workout, I'd be like, all right, I'm going to still make it hard, but we need to make sure that you're getting up and pushing. And I use timers a lot with that when I have days like that, because then it's really objective. I'm like, hey, I'm not telling you the break's over. The break's over. So it's stuff like that. And it is not necessarily the science, right? But I think that's where the feel as a coach comes in, and like learning your athlete, learning the person that's in front of you, and being able to make a conscious decision within that given time.
The art of coaching.
Yeah, the art and the science blend. I love it.
Yeah, I think that's like a beautiful thing. I remember when I was doing when I was like in strength and conditioning room, we did the grip test, we did the VBT stuff as well. The VBT was really cool because it was like, it didn't matter the weight per se, it just mattered how you moved sometimes.
Exactly.
Right? Because if, like, for example, we're doing a lot of Oli lifts and it's like, well, I want you at like 0.89 meters per second or whatever range, Poliquin's chart was saying, like, or Peripin's chart, and you're like moving and you're like, you know what? It's not the weight today. Let's move off of speed. And it's really cool to see that, like the science side of things, and play with things, because then, you could work with an athlete and see what's going on. I also like the fact that I was introduced to this concept that you're talking about, John, like, like about 10 years ago, of like, they call it like auto regulation, right? Or biofeedback, and a questionnaire. It's hard. I know you're working one-on-one with athletes, but when managing like a room of athletes, what we used to have was like, as they walked in, they're warming up. They got the phones. They had the phones now. So they're like, all right, we did this Google form. Hey, need you guys to do a quick 5-minute biofeedback form before we do the warm up. It's like 5 questions, 1 through 10, right? And it asks like sleep, things like this. And we're like, don't lie, be honest, right? Mondays was the worst. Every time we got that Monday biofeedback form, it was like low. And everyone's like, yeah, it's college athletes. What do you expect? And that's when I started realizing, like, my strength coach was like, Monday's usually not their best day. It's probably like Tuesday or Wednesday. And then like Tuesday or Wednesday is the day we would push. And everyone's like, and they started seeing the schedule and like realizing, I think it really is important to have that art of coaching, understanding, hey, here's the science, right? Here's the nervous system, but being able to go like, all right, let's work with these kids here. They probably were up, studying for something, or maybe they're just partying. Who knows? Who knows?
TikTok.
TikTok. But all these things, I think that's beautiful. My question is like, utilizing the technology, utilizing time, like you said, and stuff like that. What are some of the big things you can do when you are trying to push your athletes in their domain? Like, if you had to push certain athletes, how does that look like? I know you said, hey, I'm off of rest and stuff like that, but you're like, look, we do have a time domain. Like they have this competition and like they have to look a certain way. Because I think the big thing that's happened is a lot of data scientists have come into the field, whether they're folks that are watching like the map units or GPS units of like, oh, look at the mileage and stuff like that. And then you still got the old school coaches, right, John, where they're like, I really don't care what all this data says. We need to peak at this time. You
Yeah.
know, I need to peak at this time. How do you balance that? How do you balance like, all right, they got this game in a few weeks, but their data is off. Like data is off, right? Like, how do you push that? How do you push an athlete?
It's contextual, right? Every single person's personality is different, how they receive information and how they receive communication. Um, I try to play to the strengths of that person or the things that I know will bug them.
Mm,
So, especially for a young kid, a young one, he's like, he wants a challenge or he's like, I'm not weak. I'm not, it's like, you got to push those buttons sometimes. You have to be
yeah,
challenge them and force them to look at what they're actually doing and just call them out and not in a mean way, just being honest. And it's the same thing I said earlier. It's just being objectively honest and be like, dude, if you want to jump higher, you sitting there longer isn't going to make it happen. You got to get on that box. You got to do a depth drop and you got to jump up as high as you possibly can right now. And it's
yeah,
just, you're straight up honest with them. I'm not a rah-rah guy. I'm not a yeller. That's just not who I am personality wise. I'm a communicator. I'm a person who's going to tell you the truth and I'm going to root for you. And I think, and it's weird. I actually had, I had one of my 9-year-olds, maybe 10 now. He was like, I don't know why I do what you tell me to do. You say it and like, I don't want to do it, but like, there's some reason I'm doing it. And I'm like, I don't know what to tell you, man. I'm just coaching you. I'm telling you how to do it. So balancing it can be tough. And you're dealing with their other parts of their lives and then their kids. So I
yeah,
never want to turn them off of training. And I always keep that as the forefront is training is a lifelong thing. I want them to understand this forever because it's something that's their foundation forever. And I'm
yeah,
sure you guys know this. When you train, other things just happen to be better. That's just how our lives work. And it's such a powerful tool. So I try to reiterate those things and I stay really simple to it. I'm like, look, if you want to do what you say you want to do, then we actually need to put the time and the work into this. And what I'm showing you is how you do it. If you don't do it, that's on you, man. I'm leading you to the water. You decide how you want to,
yeah.
if you want to do it or not.
Oh,
So,
well said.
it's being honest with them, up front.
Yeah, well said.
Yeah. That's a sign of I think that I'm coming to realize that's a sign of a great coach. I
Yeah,
thought like just telling people how to do it and expecting them to like, quote, be motivated. Like I'm kind of like you, John. I'm not really a rah kind of guy. You know what I mean? Like if I'm in the moment, like as an athlete versus like a
Yeah.
coaching helm, it's like I'll try to fire up the crowd and get the energy up, and like I like kind of being a showman in a sense, right? Um, but that's taken years of like kind of practice and like knowing myself, and like trying to like again like have fun with it, right? Because like at the end of the day,
Yeah.
like the athletic pursuit is like supposed to be this fun thing, and like you just said, training. I mean, I've actually for me, training running was something that was always like a punishment in baseball, right?
Yep.
So therefore, I hated running growing up. But like if I did it in soccer, like no big deal. I'm playing a sport, But like to just like run on its own and get better at like cadence and I guess gait and where how my foot's striking and all these other things that are like the nuances of running. No way,
Yep.
Only to now kind of get into like my 30s. I'm like, I kind of like the challenge of running and what it's providing me as like I suck at it, so it's like I feel like a newbie all over again.
yeah,
So the kids though, they're like, I just want to get like really good at this one thing because it's gonna just carry over and translate. But like sometimes
Yeah.
getting better at things you suck at could then, you know what I mean? Like just because you get turned off with
Absolutely.
something, it can put that in your head for so long that you can't ever get good at it. It's an interesting like you said, like the psychology piece behind it is super interesting, fascinating, and
Yep.
yeah,
It's everything, man.
my
It's it. It's
yeah, and
everything.
it
I just think about the kids, like what they can pull up their phone and be distracted by 75,000 things.
oh
And
oh
yeah,
yeah,
that plays into how they show up in the weight room and how they show up on a daily basis. And I hate it, but it sucks because like I get that they have to use it. It's their technology, but it takes them
yeah,
away from that long-term focus and the ability to get away from the dopamine from just instant pulling up a phone. I want them to get the dopamine from proving that they can do something to
Yeah.
themselves. So
Mhm.
that's like the psychological piece too that I think about a lot. Sorry, cut you off there.
No. I was just going to lead to a question, but I think you're right. Like, I think I read a study recently that talked about like training and writing it down versus training and like logging it in a fitness tracker. Like, you actually get better progress without ever touching your phone. So I kind of want to do that as like another study myself. Like, I was having good progress with like an old school journal, and then I left it at the gym. So someone stole my 8 weeks of hard work.
No, bro. Now you gave him the secret sauce. This guy's gonna get jacked. Like, you're gonna be like, "Hey, are you the
He's gonna
guy
go
that
sell
was
your
using the
program
notebook?
now.
You've gotten jacked in 8 weeks as
Oh.
compared
I
to your
mean,
previous program."
I use abbreviations and shorthands for a lot of things, so like I understand it, but it probably looks like Swahili to this guy. So like, hopefully, I actually need to go back to that gym and see if they have it. Like someone maybe it turned up and someone like was in the last week. But then I started putting it into Trainer Eyes, Seamus, the other day. And here's a quick aside. I actually was like logging it through my trainer account for the client on his program, unbeknownst to me. Luckily, he didn't have like stuff I was like overriding or like I just saw it. I was like, oh shit, wrong days. And
Wrong
then
person. Yeah.
my aside here is like the qualm is like, you think you could just copy that workout that I like logged by myself over to like myself. No, that feature doesn't exist apparently. So
Not
a little
yet.
frustrated.
Not
That was
yet.
like
Dude,
my problem
a
for
little
today.
aside on like progress and like check-ins, guys. Like, I remember like it was like six. I think it was like 6 years ago. I remember I had like a board for my training, right? And I would just write down the things on there, but I never recorded it. I would just write it on the whiteboard what the training was, and then the 4 weeks of like the weights, and I would progress. But man, having like a trainerize for me to see the progress like in graph mode and like all that and like years of it now, it really just is like a plethora of evidence of like, oh yeah, like that was my weight, my body weight, and then that was my like resistance training at that time, and then like this time, and then you see like the years of it, and it's just nice to it like logging things is so powerful, and I never really got into that practice until like 5 6 years ago, and like I was like that's when everything changed. I think everything was more consistent, my progress was more consistent, I could really keep an eye on it. So yeah, definitely love the logging. Marcos, I'm with you
No,
there.
yeah. So I'm using that. So I'll let you know how that goes versus the other 8 weeks. I'm sure it's fine. It's, we're probably splitting hairs here, but, um, that's another thing too, is like, again, feel, right? Perceived exertion, all these things, like circling back to like my initial question with the velocity based trainer, right? You mentioned that being a great tool. John, we're playing with potential ideas in our clinical jobs about what we should do to kind of spruce up our evaluation a little bit. We talked about force plates and then the expense of that, and jump mats and things like that. And then we also brought up like maybe we could do with a velocity based trainer, right? Speed elements and for recording that. But then again, like how I've most commonly heard it was like actually Coach Travis Smash, right, when he was talking about his like Olympic lifters, right? So how are you, like you mentioned, like good to go, like needs improvement. They're doing hypertrophy today. Like, what do those numbers actually like correlate to? And like what units have you used? Like, and what do they cost, out of curiosity?
For the like velocity based trainers and those kinds of
For the
things.
BBT.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I've used a couple different ones. I had the Tendo for a while. I've used that. That was like old school. It's like one of the first ones. Then a couple years ago, there's a company called Output Sports who I had the fortune of using. And if you guys haven't used them, they're fantastic. They're based out of, I think, the UK, and their team's great. There's these little devices you could essentially put either like they have wearables where you could put it on your arm. So if you want to do like a shot put throw on a med ball, you could see the velocity. If you wanted to do jumps, you could see jump height. You could see the barbell movement depending on the move. You could even put it on a kettlebell. So they were great in the terms of versatility. I now just use Metric VBT, which is an app on the iPhone, or I'm sure Android has it as well, and it's super simple. You do need a tripod because it does need to be sturdy. But it measures mostly only barbell stuff. It won't measure your jumping. It won't measure things like that. But there's a lot of exercises in there. You record yourself. You can record your athletes, clients, whoever, and it just analyzes the bar path and it analyzes your speed on each move too. It's super simple too. And yeah.
Quick question though. So like, in this application, it just needs something to identify that looks like a barbell, like, and then like trace that line effectively. Like you could do a broomstick potentially, or like a dowel.
Possibly. Yeah, I think so. I think it's meant to also track the circumference of the plate. So I think it does the plate and the bar path. So I'll send you a video so you guys can see what it is.
Yeah.
I wouldn't. Yeah, I could actually see that being okay on a PVC pipe or something that it could track and pick
Just
up. Even if you made
because
like paper, like cardboard plates,
yeah,
you probably
like
could get away with it.
yeah, I'm like, okay, like this is cool. It's an app. We already have setups in our clinics that maybe allow for that. But it's like, again, you're saying it's tracing the barbell and not the person. So then I'm thinking like, do I need like a little makeshift like trainer bar that's like, I mean, for some of our people, it's maybe too heavy, but you know, if I like find a way to get one that's like down to like 5 pounds, you know, and just test speed, like, I don't know. I'm thinking here because I was like, okay, like an app sounds far more feasible, easier to deploy across our centers.
Platforms,
And
yeah.
yeah, like I just was like, that's
right.
I mean, what's
You
like, what's
already
the
have like
relative?
iPads, put them up on a tripod, run that. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Yep.
Yeah, you probably could just use Seamus. Now I'm thinking about this. You probably could just use your the Phi one that's already at like a certain height and just like turn it so that's in your room, and then just have that
Yeah.
app downloaded to their iPad too. Is there a cost associated with the metric one?
Yeah, I think I paid like $80 for the year, something like that. It wasn't outrageous
Easy.
at all. And I think if you do like a team, it's like 200 or something like that. So,
Perfect.
yeah, I could be more. Don't quote me. Don't quote me on that.
Well, it's. I mean, we're looking at like $200 to $500 a unit for something, or you know, so
right.
for a year,
you're thinking like versatility. Because like when you're looking at these testings, like we looked at, for example, like what is that thing, the force plates, and it's like one application. You know, it's like squat, and then the application itself, the instruments are so delicate that if it's like not utilized correctly, you have to be like almost like an engineer to like figure out the delicacy of this thing. So I think when you're deploying something cross-platform across multiple units across the world, it's like has to be reliable, repeatable, and it has to be very just like scalable and easy to use. And I think like that's what some of these apps in sports performance have done. I mean, I love before they got bought out by Whoop was Push. Push was such a great VBT trainer because it was this little, like you said, it was like a little like wrap that you put on the bar or the hand or something. And then the iPad, it was just an iPad and you could see the speed in real time. And we put that for the athletes. Like you'd put it in front of the athletes. So it was like on a little rack on the squat rack. So it's like they're doing their squat and they're all just looking at the speed and they're like, no, you're not in the right speed. Go fast. And you could see them go faster in real time. And it's this thing where it's like it's a corrective measure in real time. I mean, that's the beauty of those things. That's the beauty of those things.
Anyone who wants to know more about the ins and outs of VBT, Brian Mann is like he's essentially the guy who, I'm not gonna say he started it, but he has broken it down and will teach you so many things about it if you just go to YouTube and type in Brian Mann. There's one more guy. I think he's the VBT guy. I think Coach Jacob something. I can't remember his full name. I'm sorry. But if you look up VBT on Google, you can absolutely find just tons of articles on it and why it works and why it's just more objective too, which is nice. Like you said earlier, it can regulate if somebody has 100 pounds on the bar and it feels like 1,000 today. We're probably not moving it slow. Well, that's not what I want today. I want more of the accelerative strength category. So I need you to get a little bit lighter and we're going to move it better.
Yeah.
So, but I there's so many apps now too. I'm sure you could probably find one that would cover multiple people across the platform.
Movements, yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's like you're using it more like in an application that's like diagnostic in a sense, and then like we've been tasked with like I guess like these last 2 Fridays. So this Friday and the previous Friday was like kind of related to like analyses like with like our aging population and just like people with like longevity, and basically it seems like we're just trying to potentially create something that other people have not and look at that like thing. And so my head's been spinning and like looking at stuff, and I'm sure Seamus's has too. And so hearing people that are using it, with young population, again, like we know that like if you lack the ability to like jump as you get older, like that's obviously like a sign of like youthfulness, right? So like again, the more that we can kind of investigate and understand, and it's like a cool kind of like project. And I'm like, again, not that I'm like tasking myself with it, but I was like, okay, like you've already kind of mentioned like that objective reading to get people and gauging them in terms of like their readiness score, quote unquote, for like the day with training. So like, again, I think we could use it. Like, I want something that's like, hey, you've done it here, but here's how you could use it in application, right? And
Yeah.
here's the app or whatever, and people might be more invigorated to like go use that thing on their own, which I think is cool. That again, it could just be an app. I mean, we didn't even think about that. We were thinking more of like an item, something.
That's all.
John, I wanted to ask you real quick. I still want to talk about like applications and cool things. There was something that you mentioned to Sean and I on a text, talking about working with athletes. It's very specific. There's this thing called the Sport React that you brought up. Can you break that down for us? What is that exactly?
Yeah, I mean, I got them right here.
We'll link it in the thing.
And I actually have both. So I got the Blaze Pods. If you guys haven't used the Blaze Pods, they're a light device system that shows different colors. You could put them on the ground, you could put them on cones, you could strap them in, but it's just reactive. And so like I'll do stuff where, for instance, recently I was using it with one of my clients. He's 12, and I stuck them to the basketball hoop, brought the hoop down to the lowest it possibly could go, put them on the backboard below the rim, slow enough you can get them, but 4 across there, 2 on the ground, 1 behind at the free throw line, and he has to figure out what to do in real time. So he's looking for 1 color. There's 7 pods. There's 6 distracting colors. He is jumping, okay. And then, so for me, I get to see how quickly someone makes a decision and how then they react to get ready for the next thing. Because in sports, it is all about being ready to go immediately and transferring energy. So it helps me as a coach to see, oh, he saw that up there, hit it, he got there quick, then he landed and then looked around. How can I correct that? How can I make it better? How can I make it more efficient? Okay, hey, as soon as you hit that, you should be looking for the next one. I want you to bounce on the feet, turn, scan, and make a decision. And so for something like that, it's really simple. The Blaze Pods are great for that. The other one is the Sport React. And so this device here, it's similar concept. I can do similar things with it, but I can also make cognitive things. So I can do math problems on here, different color codes, different shapes. I can do that's laser timer. So there's 6 pods you get. So I can set up gates, and they have tripods with this set. They're fantastic. So these are all lasers. So I can either hit it to make it go off, or I can go in front of it, and I can make it as close as 2 centimeters, as far as a meter away. So if I have an athlete, for instance, I use these with my another basketball athlete that I have. I said, all right, so I want you to have a ball in your hand. You have to go through these 2 cones every single time. And they were the long type cones that, you have kind of like defenders. And I had them all on the perimeter of the 3-point line. And I said, you have to get back to these cones, and you have to find the next one while dribbling. And so for him, it's like this scanning while he's dribbling, making a decision, being able to then kind of carry his athleticism. I want to see how you flow during this. And so that's how I use it a lot. And then obviously for timer systems, like it's great for like my reaction drills, the 5-10-5s. Hey, I want to see this curve 10-yard sprint. I want to know what your splits are for your 20-yard to your 30-yard sprint. So those are all the ways that I utilize this technology, because I've had timer systems before and they're okay. And I've had really nice timer systems before and they're okay. And this one's great because everything's in one app. It just tracks it all for me. So I haven't even begun to touch the power of the Sport React yet, because it is so big. It has so many things you could do with it. Yeah.
That's what I was going to say. I was like, first off, if there's anyone that's going to do math problems while doing
it's hard,
doing
man.
exercise, it's going to be Marcos.
Dude, it's funny you say that, because like I was running last Friday and I was telling my other like running partner, I was like, this is like is it weird that I'm like doing mental math facts in my head because I'm thinking about my son and his homework right now? And he's like, of course you would be. But like, I was like, it's the perfect time. There's nothing else going on. I'm like listening to just.
Is that whole thing, nothing. John, like, is that whole thing like seeing what an athlete is capable of? Because like, I'm like in my head thinking like, if someone's going through drills, that's already like a cognitive load, right? Like, but then you're having them do different math problems, for example, or look for different colors. What is that doing for like the speaker, for like the audience that's like, yo, that's a little like high level, like maybe even go high level a little bit with the science, but like, what is that doing for the person when you're stressing them out, quote unquote, a little bit more? Because that would stress me out for sure. I'd be like, what the,
Yeah, you see frustration for sure at times. And I think it's really important to allow that frustration, because you're going to have that when you play sports. You're going to have that in life. You're going to have that when you're practicing. And so learning how to adjust and come back to your centering yourself is so important. So I see that from there. And most of the time, if that happens, I'll say, keep composure, baby, composure, composure, composure. So I'll be chanting that from the sides. I'm typically, that's how I'll make sure I'm getting in their heads. Like, stay composed. Hey, what's the next step? What's the next steps? Don't get upset and lose yourself right now because you made a mistake. Go to the next thing, go to the next thing, go to the next thing. So for me, on like a teaching level, that's one piece. In terms of like the scientific side, the vestibular portion of the brain, where you're able to look in 4 different directions, but also travel the other way, your proprioception, being able to make a decision quickly. So you're not only, you're essentially over time, we're trying to make things unconscious for athletes, right? They're very conscious. I've had my athletes tell me this. When I help them sprint, or when I help them, like when they're doing shooting drills, I'm like, when you're shooting, or when you're throwing a baseball, when you're swinging a bat or a tennis club or a tennis racket or a golf club, it's really easy to think about, okay, I got to do this, 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 and this. I got to make sure my hands are here. I got to make sure my eyes are here. It's like, dude, just like
I remember that. I remember that with the golf swing.
Yeah, right. Because it's so many things, right? So you're trying to be technical about it. And most of the time, it just helps me see them as they are as athletes. How do you move? How do you make a decision? Are you moving well? And I think on the most simplistic level, that's what most athletes need to work on, is coordination, being able to be efficient in movement, and being able to transfer energy well. If you can do those 3 things, you're going to be way ahead of your competition. And so having these technology pieces are really great, because as a coach, I don't have to be calling the cues now. I can just watch and I can better objectively coach at that point. So that's how I utilize it. That's how it helps me see them on the science level. Like I said, like the vestibular portion, proprioception, building up that ability to scan and make decisions quickly, because the more you expose your brain and your body to something, the more your body will adapt to it, and it'll become easier over time.
Sick. I mean, guys, have I told you how many tabs I pulled up in the matter of like 5 minutes of this conversation right now?
It's like a science lesson, bro. I'm like, yo.
Well, yeah. I mean, so many different like metrics and applications. The sports react one's super cool. I mean, like,
it is,
again,
really
like
cool.
kind of gamifying, but then also having, like you said, like timer system with it, looking at, the 5-10-5 drill or those other things. Like, man, there's like, granted, that's a pricey unit. I'm not going to lie. But I can see like the application side of it for, again, what you need to do, especially with like the younger athletes. Like I'm excited about it. I've never even used it. I was like, but that would definitely excite me, because like you're just gamifying like things that within the game, like my dad would always play this number game when we played soccer. So he'd give everybody a number, like you're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the other team's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If you hear your number, you go out and you're playing like 1v1, 2v2, 3v3, whatever that is, right? But like as soon as you gamify and like you have to start thinking and react and just go, like it was just so much fun as a kid, versus just drills, or just the training alone. So for the younger athlete, like again, if you can gamify the training and make it also have like elements to that, they look forward to it. I'm sure like you're like, hey, like what are you feeling like doing today? You ask that question, they're like jazzed that like, no, they're getting their crack at whatever the high score is, or I don't even know. Do you keep like a scoring thing like between other like athletes that are in the same sport?
Yeah, so it's pretty cool, because you can have your team built on there, and then you can compare numbers to everyone else that you have on your roster. And then in the moment, like on one of the systems, the Blaze Pods, I'll have like it shows you how many hits, and you could do stations also within each. So I have 7 pods, so I can set up 3 stations of 2 and have just like a 1 out or something using 6 pods. 3 stations of 2, you got to find your color. Or I can make 1 giant station and be like, hey, you got to find your color, and whoever has the most hits. So like I'll put it in a giant circle. And this is one of my favorites to do, because it's if everyone's in a giant circle, let's say we're 30 feet across. Okay. 30 feet across. You have 3 people in there. We have 6 pods. Everyone has their own color. We're us 3. We're in a circle. I have red. Marcos, you got blue. Seamus, you got green. That's the color you have to go for. And what's great about it is, since you can't leave the circle, you might run into each other. You might get really close. And so I've never seen more cutting happen properly. And what I mean by is natural reactions, because you are not paying attention to what anything else outside of finding your color. And so what's cool about that is like you're getting to the end zone, right? That is the goal. Yeah. Let's get there. And so you're like, you're just like, oh, nope, I got to go this way. And so it's just really cool. I've seen people almost run into each other. I've seen people jump, stop, cut, go back the other way. And so you're like spins, and it's like, okay, cool. This is really cool to see that. And you nailed it, man. Fun. I worked with, and you talked about groups earlier and like athletes earlier. If you're not making it fun, you're going to lose the room.
Yeah.
And it's either that or you're a drill sergeant and everyone hates you. And so it's one of the
Yeah.
two, and that's cool. I'm cool
Yeah,
with
yeah.
that. I've had to pull out the drill sergeant sometimes, especially for the younger kids, because they need some a little
Tough love, you can say
yeah,
it. They just need a
yeah,
little ass whooping now and again,
yeah.
little
I
yeah.
give them the stink eye, and I'm like, "You done yet?" And like
Yeah.
just straight stare at them, and it's just like the death is like in their face, and you're like, "Oh, okay, I'm good." I'm like, "All right,
Man,
let's move on."
it,
Yeah,
it,
100%. You
I
got to
say
have fun.
I say that because I remember I got tasked with high school soccer team with my dad. So we were like during summer, they were coming over to the CrossFit gym in the morning, like 1 or 2 days. We did like, I just built a program with them. I had no idea what I was doing. I'm like still young. I'm like 21 at the time, maybe. Right. So, I mean, I'm like kind of right in the same boat. And granted, like these kids already kind of had it instilled in them to like work hard. Right. And like wanting to get after it. But as soon as I like gamified it and made the coaches get involved, man, like it was like they wanted to beat their coach. Their coach was like, again, like, pretty athletic. And I'll never forget I had them do like plate pushes, like a sled push.
Yeah.
And the coach literally passed out like on the plate push because he's like low to the ground. And he's like, all the kids were like, they're like, Marcos, you need to come over here. I was like, what happened? I was like, is everybody okay? They're like, yeah, coach passed out. I was like, really,
Oh
coach passed out? I was
man.
like, thank God it wasn't like a student,
Yeah.
because they all signed waivers and whatnot. But like they were busting his balls for the rest of summer about
Hell
like,
yeah.
coach is like, nope. I was like, I don't push the plate anymore, guys. I'm sorry, I can't get that low.
And what a great memory for those kids, and what a great way to like
Absolutely.
create trust, because it's like, hey, if your coach gets in there with you, it's like, yo, remember coach, like he did that, and like they
Dude,
know that
my
he'll go to depths for them, bro.
Yes. Yes.
and my dad was getting in there with him, and my dad's in his late 60s now, right? So back at the time, he's like, oh man, he had to have been late 50s, right? So, approaching 60 with these kids, and they're like, they're like, Coach Rivera, you're gonna do it with us, and I was like, my dad like does this pretty regularly. He gets his he pushes the intensity of stuff, right? So it was just like cool that like again, like age having no boundaries, kind of like what you open up with, right? Like they're like, oh crap, they're like, Mr. Rivera's like beating us in these workouts, and he's obviously 3 times their age, and they're like, by the end of it, of course, like when it came to running and just like learning mechanics of wall balls and just little things that like, again, I think if I had thought about it more what would transition over, right? Like to soccer specifically, like my goal was like, how do I make them not feel tired and also get strong? And my dad was like, when we got into the first couple games of the season, my kids their legs were strong, and they had that endurance and they were outlasting the kids, for that varsity squad. And I was like, I didn't even know what I was doing. I was just focusing on I knew how I felt from when I played baseball versus when I started CrossFitting, and that carryover that I went when I started to go out and just play sports again. I was like, my legs just feel stronger because I have that endurance. So, I mean, spend more time in it. I wish I could have, but like with kids specifically, because man, like there's nothing better than having these kids would come in, they'd smile, they'd laugh. All right, what are we doing today, Mr. Rivera? Coach Rivera? I was like, oh, you're in for a treat, guys. Like not trying to crush them, but just like trying to get them to be competitive. I was always about like competition, fun against each other. Like I knew they're going to get a good workout so long as they just showed up. And man, it was like 20 kids deep, and they were all in it for 8 weeks when I had them. It was crazy.
Yeah.
Those are great groups, man.
That's a great thing. That's what I love, man. I mean, like that's the thing about the kids is like you can push them. I mean, when I was coaching a lot of strength and conditioning for high school wrestlers and college wrestlers, it was funny because the high school wrestlers, like we had to do a bunch of things, and we had like one day on the track, and I was like, oh sweet, we could do some track work. And the best track work, I think John, you said it, like Marcus, you said it, is like you just let them do their thing together. So like I didn't teach them cutting drills per se, and like I did like the what is it, the aerobic plyos, like A skips, hang knees, whatever, all those things, right? But the cutting mechanics and stuff like that, it's when they have to face each other. If you called out A or B person would be the person that does a takedown. So they're doing like side to side drills, and then you say B, and then like one person does a takedown, and it's like funny how you see like movement from some kids you never thought were athletic. You go, oh my god, he is an athlete. He just doesn't show it on the mat sometimes, but right now he's showing it. So I know it's there. It's really cool to see that, especially in the game speed stuff, when kids get competitive and they got their different ways to play, man. It's amazing stuff.
I think we've gotten so into like sports specific training and trying to mimic things all the time. And, Marcus, to your point about just getting those kids stronger and general preparation, it goes in every direction in a positive way. Just general strength conditioning. It's not that hard. It's not that complex.
No. Yeah.
We've gotten so fancy with things now, and it's great and to an extent, but at the same time, it's like just stick to the foundations of your squat, your hinge, your press, your single leg stuff, your core stability, your core strength, and your pulls. I mean, it's really that simple. And yeah, your speed and cutting abilities, but like just that general preparation, I think we've gotten away from, and that's just the
Yeah.
foundations.
Well, I appreciate you bringing that up, actually, John. I was going to ask you about like training sessions because you do training sessions with these guys and getting specific. This is like a two-parter question, kind of like deep, but you're working with athletes, maybe as super young, and then all this stuff. Like, what are your thoughts on, yeah, how would a training session go? But then also, like, how do you make sure that in your training session you have to fine tune the short term because you want that athlete to get to their sport, but also thinking like long term, like people say, I think the studies say that like it's better to be a generalist for a while until you specialize. Like some of
Hmm.
these best college, like I know wrestling, but like some of the best college wrestlers weren't even wrestlers until like junior year of high school, and it's like they became NCAA double champions in college, which is like insane,
Mm-hmm.
So like, but like, how do you think about that? Where it's like, yeah, you want to keep it general, but also at the same time, you're like, well, they have to be a rotary athlete or they're like a pitcher, so I got to do all this other stuff. Like, how do you think about that when it comes to like training sessions?
Yeah, for the younger kids, the kids that are between 9 and like 13, it's simple. I'm like, I want you to be really good at push-ups. I want you to be really good at goblet squats. I want you to be really good at lunges. I want you to be really good
Hmm.
at hinging and getting your hamstrings strong. So really building the structural pieces to them and not necessarily loading them a ton. Yeah, I'll load them when it's appropriate, but they don't need a ton of load. They need exposure to getting themselves in the
Mm,
positions that are going to challenge them. And that's just like basic, right? It's really easy with them to me. And then getting them bouncy. Like, I want you jumping. I want you going left. I want you going right. I want to see if you could do a 360 in the air and land. I want to see if you can jump as far as you possibly can and land. I don't even care if you land well. I want to see how you absorb it. I want to see how you do land. Okay, can we challenge that a little bit more? Do we need to back off? So for my younger kids, it's basic strength training. It's for my more proficient movers, I'll give them some more stuff. And that's all training age versus their biological age, right? So if they're showing me that they can do more, handle more, I'll give them more. So it's pushing them appropriately. When it comes to like the older kids, 14, now they're getting high school, now they're getting to that, college range. My high school guys, I try to make them as strong as I can. I try to get them to get their bench press down. I try to get them to get their squats down, their deadlifts. Those are things that are going to be expected to do in the weight room. So we need to make sure those are hit, right? And I'd rather them mess up with me than to mess up when no one's there, because we all know in most high school weight rooms, it's just not that great, unless
Hmm.
they're like a Harvard Westlake, who I know that their program's fantastic. So it's
Harvard Westlake's got the money, man.
yeah,
They
exactly.
got the
And
money, bro.
so
Oh,
so with those guys, it's and girls, it's really just kind of expanding on the foundations. And then, like you
Yeah.
said, if I have a specific, for instance, basketball players need a lot of ankle and knee care, and my shoulders, and for my pitchers and my volleyball players, and for golfers, we need a lot of rotational work, right? So it's like, okay, well, what are our main pieces today? Let's get the accessory stuff over here. So for me, that's like putting them in. For me, I love the what strap. If you haven't seen those, it's just a Valsa strap that you can tie yourself up into and do rotational patterns, getting them to really work on, hey, you throw a lot. Well, we need to work your eccentric position on your shoulder then. Okay. So those are basic,
Hmm.
again, it's like hitting the basic things of what they're going to be exposed to and getting them to be as strong in those positions as possible.
Yeah.
And then obviously range of motion comes into play. If somebody's hypermobile, I want them to be more stable. If somebody is very not mobile, and I have a sophomore who plays baseball, and his T-spine rotation to his left is terrible. And so I gave him a lot. I was like, hey, dude, you need to do these things. And it's funny, we are talking about like the buy-in and stuff. His dad just called me last week and was like, he's finally buying into doing these things on his own. And I gave him a really tough, I call it the nitty gritty. So for like those specialty things, I call it the nitty gritty, and I give my athletes these specific workouts where I'm like, dude, this is your nitty gritty. You got to get this down. So I call it that
yeah.
specifically.
Yeah.
So they got like, all right, I got to get through the nitty gritty, because I'm like, I know it's tedious, dude. I don't want to do the mobility stretching. I don't want to
Yeah.
do these pails and rails. I don't want to do this end range stuff all day and breath work. But guess what? You need it. And so when I have those special situations, it's like, okay, as soon as they see what happens after they give it their full effort, they're like, I
Yeah.
can't go back. So,
Yeah.
that's how I
Yeah.
approach those like specialty situations. But yeah, man, on the basis of everything is like just be really good at movement in all patterns, left, right, up, down, and be rotational. I don't care if you play sports or not, you need to rotate.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it kind of goes back to like what you're saying too. Like it's like we're specializing kids so young for
Dude.
athletics, and it's like almost like maybe a detriment because you're not getting different planes of motion that other athletics involve.
Yep.
And again, like you might be the best baseball player, in your class, but then like you evolve up to the next level and you're just, you're just the regular fish in the pond versus the big fish in that smaller pond.
Dude,
And
that's what happened to me, Marco. It's like I couldn't do shit. Like I couldn't do squat for shit. Like I like wrestled from like middle school all the way to college, and it's like, man, I couldn't like lift certain ways. I couldn't move in certain ways, and you're like, yo, do I suck? Am I like not an athlete, but then I could crush people? Like what the fuck? Like I can't lift a certain weight on the deadlift, but I can lift a heavy weight in the wrestling room. Like what's with it? It's like the weirdest thing. I don't know.
But that also goes to show that it doesn't always translate, right? I mean, it doesn't necessarily, like some people might just be really good at their sport and need some strength and conditioning, need a certain dose, right? It's like how strong is too strong, how much is too much. And so it's just that's another topic though. We can talk about that all day.
Yeah. Well, and again, like I think it's like to me, like I look back at my upbringing and my dad's like, "Are you bad?" Or my mom's like, "Are you mad you didn't specialize a bit more?" I was like, "No," because I look back and I got like exposed to like I love basketball, but I just obviously was not tall enough to kind of play at the next level, beyond like high school freshman year. All right, cool. I liked football because of the challenges and the physicality that I did not have, but it like maybe toughened me up a bit. Senior year, I was a kicker, but kicking was because I played soccer when I was like 6 to 8 years old. And then I was like, I can kick a ball. Fuck it. I'll just go be the kicker my senior year. And then like baseball was quote my sport. But then as soon as it wasn't because my arm went to poo, I was like, oh man, like I got to reevaluate this. And again, like knowing what I know now, like, again, it was maybe more of some of the just staying after the basics, GPP and keeping the body and up on like the recovery. Actually, you know what? Like I'd argue to say that like, yeah, the training is good, but like the recovery is even more important. And I did nothing for it. Like you're just saying the pails and rails and the mobility and like you said the nitty gritty stuff. Is that what
the nitty gritty, man?
The nitty gritty, right? Like,
dude.
And the year that we did our best, in my opinion, was again like my baseball senior year. And it was because we did the nitty gritties every day. It was 15 minutes of these fundies, just fundamental. Yeah. We're literally starting every practice off and every game with backhand, forehand for 3 minutes. All right, cool. This like square drill. Like I remember it vividly. And it was just these nitty gritty fundamentals. And I look into like, I was like, damn, why can't my like 6-year-old son just understand like doing this like over and over and over again? Yes, while tedious it's just reps, and most of the time you just need those. And
you need that volume, dude.
Yeah, but I'm like, man, we went from like shit fielding percentage the year before to like virtually like unstoppable for that year. Of course, we made the one error when it comes to like playoff time with like our youngest player. But again, like that team, those kids that worked on those fundamentals and stuck with that for 4 years, won state. Right. And they ended up beating again, like a legit team in Bishop Gorman because they never have a bad team in baseball and football. And so like they earned their right from like those fundamental things. So, I mean, you get that buy-in, the art of buy-in and the art of coaching to like the young kids, man. That's almost why I don't want to coach. That's why I'm not coaching my son. I'm like, Grandpa, you can do it. Hey, I think we should get some of these blaze pods because they're going to be fun. We can use them. Like,
oh yeah,
I don't know. I got like a million ideas of like again, play with my kids that like I want to go like set that up right now. Go out to the park, do that. In addition to like, I mean, he and my daughter would have like a field day just touching colors for probably an hour, guaranteed. So
I use it with my 87-year-old. I
sure.
use it.
Yeah,
and I have her cover an eye. I want you to do this. Okay, now do side to side. I want you to go one arm only. I want you to alternate. I want you to turn sideways. So like, you can do whatever you imagine. If you're creative and you have fun, you'll be fine. You're gonna have some fun.
That's awesome, man. Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, the fundamentals, man, I think everything can be solved with some volume, right? Like good coaching, good volume amount. I mean, Marco, same thing to you. I think the best year I had was junior to senior year. Going to college was my coach was just like, you're doing 100 on this side, you're doing 100 down the middle, and you're doing 100 on the right side for your best takedown. Then you're gonna do 100, 1, 2, and 3 on your second best takedown, and he just did that. And then that was like the practice like warm up, and then he goes, okay, we're gonna do this escape, and like it just became a numbers game at one season. It was just so great because it wasn't just drilling because like that quote, like drillers are make killers, like our drillers are killers. It's like, but it was like drilling with intent. And once you got past the threshold of like drilling for numbers, then you started drilling for intent. And each rep in that 100, you're like actually going through it and like making it better.
Mhm.
It was fundamentally like some of the best years for sure. John, I want to be appropriate for time. Just coming up on an hour. Um, what would you say just to finish off here for just like first off, like where can people find you? What's some big messages you can take home? And if you have anything coming out or anything you're excited for, yeah, let the folks know, man. First off, this conversation went by amazingly. Can't believe it's already been an hour. So
I'm glad it was a good one. Yeah, man, I work on a lot of stuff. I think the thing I'm really excited about is something I started yesterday. I went to school for broadcast journalism. So like for me, my passion is putting out really cool pieces of content that's not just like the 7 best things to do or like, don't do
Mhm.
this if you're going to hurt your back. It's like, no. I want to actually dive into the nitty gritty or the more psychological piece to it. So something I am starting, it's a YouTube show. It's 5 to 10 minutes. It's a little docu-series called Learning with You. So as I'm learning from other experts, you guys are learning with me. So as I'm learning with you, we all learn together. And it's real talk. We have interviews, but we also have action taking place as well. So people can walk away learning something. And so the first one we shot yesterday, it's going to come out in a few months. It's all about pain perception, understanding how to live with pain, and understanding how to
mm,
walk alongside pain. So that's just the first episode that I'm touching. I look to do a lot of things with that, and I'm very excited about that. My podcast, I've interviewed some really awesome coaches and some great people over the years, and thankfully with the network that I've made, Olympic track coaches, college strength coaches, NFL strength coaches, to the psychologists for the Royals, to writers out here in Hollywood who have gone through the process. I'm very big on process, and I'm very big on putting in the work, and like we talked about, the inputs and the consistency. And so my overall message is
Yeah.
be you, man. Fail, learn, and evolve is my slogan. Be you is the overall message. You can't really do anything in this life if you're just sitting there stagnant and you're scared to try. So if anyone's listening to this and you can walk away with one message, is whatever you're thinking about doing, go do it. It's not going to be perfect, but you can evolve it over time, because if you continue to do, you're going to continue to evolve. And just go do it.
Well said, man. Hey, and thank you for your time. I'm going to end it there because that was just poignant and to the point, and it was awesome, man. And thank you for, again, just thanks for being you. I guess like you're
Hey,
like,
baby.
this was, again, it was exceptional in my eyes. I mean, so many things, so many little nuggets and different things for people to go, like, go try out, whether it's like the pods or Sports React or again, VBT, or, there's just, again, starting with GPP, like all these things I think are just, again, great conversation, great way of like thinking about like youth and sports. And I don't know, man, like, continue to have a ultimate success, man. And hopefully the journalism piece, like you said, and integrating that like passion, that thing you kind of went, for school for, right? Like, and actually being able to kind of bring it to the forefront. I hope that comes. That's why I still tutor a little bit on the side, because math is still my first love somehow. And, it's quirky, but it works for me,
I love math too, man. I'm right there with you. Math's awesome.
Yeah, it is. It is. It is. And Seamus, I mean, anything else, man? Or are we good to wrap this up?
no, man, I think that's it, dude. What is it? Be you, and it's in the nitty gritty. That's the name of the game. Thanks, guys.
Absolutely, y'all. Thank you guys for your time.